This program contains coarse language.
Inside a well-known Sydney strip club, a plan is about to be hatched.
It starts with a meeting of 5 men at Men's Gallery at strip joint in Pitt Street in Sydney.
They're plotting a new business that's going to make them more than $100 million. That business is a scam to rip off the Australian Taxation Office. They name it after the Greek god of wealth, Plutus.
There were Porsches, there were BMWs, there was an aircraft. This was a massive amount of money flowing around.
Plutus will become the biggest tax fraud in Australia's history.
It's easy to say ripping off the tax system, but they're ripping off everyday Australians.
With 28,000 pages of evidence and 70 hours of police surveillance recordings never before heard outside a courtroom, Four Corners brings you the story of how they did it.
Where are we going to move this money to? Can't just pay it all to the tax office, but we need something.
And how it was brought down.
The only place I lied through my fucking teeth was how it was at the time.
All right, now we're fucked, man. Like, we're fucked to the capital level.
Shake that ass for some paper. Make that cash, bitch, I'm way up.
It's 2014 and it's lunchtime at the Men's Gallery.
I'ma get that bag either way.
From the outset, their intent is clear. One of the men hands out new phones they'll use to cover their tracks.
So phones that are not linked to them with all new numbers. It's an old form of trying to evade detection. It really goes to the heart of their criminal enterprise. It shows that they most definitely knew that they were going to undertake a criminal activity.
This man is Adam Cranston, a 27-year-old corporate player experienced in cleaning up broken businesses. He also has a love of fast cars and a surprising family connection.
So Adam Cranston was raised in the Sutherland Shire in a fairly privileged family. He then entered the workforce working as a consultant to insolvent companies. Notably, he was the son of Michael Cranston, the Deputy Commissioner of the ATO.
Also present at the meeting that day is Jay Onley, a former pro snowboarder and a risk taker who's an expert in business turnaround. Then there's Simon Anquetil, an entrepreneur who brings the building blocks of the scheme. And IT recruiter Josh Kitson, who will soon be installed as the frontman, the company's general manager.
Simon Anquetil is a tech entrepreneur and someone who was deeply interested in startups. He was previously the managing director of a company that had gone into liquidation, and it appears a strong patron of gentlemen's clubs. Josh Kitson was one of Simon Anquetil's best friends, and he was very effective in recruiting clients into the business and was effectively running it.
Their plan is to set up a payroll company that processes wages on behalf of other businesses. They'll rake in clients' money, but instead of paying the tax they owe to the government, they'll just keep it. The Men's Gallery meeting ends, and afterwards, Anquetil and Kitson exchange a flurry of texts. It's the bare bones of a scheme that will soon morph into something much bigger.
So Plutus was itself set up to be a squeaky clean company. Its employees weren't aware of what was going on underneath the business, and it certainly was operating, for all intents and purposes, in a legitimate way.
They set up shop in the elite harbourside suburb of Double Bay. Plutus Payroll aggressively targets big corporate and government clients that contract Plutus to manage their staff's wages.
Plutus billed itself as Australia's only zero-fee outsourced payroll service. So it really undercut the market quite heavily, and it was quite successful in its little niche around IT contractors.
Within a year, the syndicate steals more than $4 million. This is how the scam works. Plutus processes the gross wages from legitimate clients through a layer of companies that sit beneath it. On paper, they appear to be run by a series of front people or dummy directors, but in reality, the syndicate is in control. While these second-tier companies do pay wages, they only pay a small portion of the tax they owe. The syndicate steals the rest of the money. Periodically, they dump these companies, dodging the tax debts, and start again with new companies.
Australian Taxation Office takes a number of months or sometimes years to catch on to the fact that the tax hasn't been paid, so they have some breathing space. So they use that breathing space to take the monies that which the Australian Taxation Office would have been entitled and redirect them into various other companies. So by the time the Australian Taxation Office chases them for the monies have already gone, and then they've moved on to another company to implement the same scheme.
And they started just moving these amounts of money in broken up amounts into these different companies and then into various bank accounts. And it just kept going through this really complex path of going from company to bank account to company and then eventually back into the bank accounts of the people involved.
Simon Anquetil has experience running a scheme very similar to this on a much smaller scale.
These people don't overnight decide to do $100 million fraud. Their conduct prior to that is on the dark side.
And Simon Anquetil was on the dark side?
He was on the dark side, yeah.
Lawyer Michael Hader examined Anquetil over suspected credit card fraud during liquidation proceedings in 2012. A small company called eStrategy Group had gone bust, owing more than $100,000 in tax to the ATO.
He would use these credit cards to go to the strip clubs for so-called business expenses when I cross-examined him about it. He said he was taking prospective clients to those strip clubs. Sometimes he was spending $8,000 to $12,000 a day at those strip clubs, and sometimes in consecutive days.
That doesn't sound like a legitimate business expense.
No, it doesn't, and it's not.
Liquidator Bruce Gleeson believes Anquetil had installed a dummy director at eStrategy Group and was the true mastermind of the company. Gleeson submitted a report to the corporate regulator ASIC, but no further action was taken.
The difficulty always is that when something like eStrategy happens and then they can see that the consequence is not significant, then it's particularly to unscrupulous business operators, there's then the ability for them to say, how can we take advantage of this? I think what we've seen, regrettably, in the Plutus matter is that almost you could say eStrategy Group was a trial run for a bigger event, and a much bigger event at that.
If the punishment for getting caught isn't significant, they get a sense of ego that, okay, I've learnt from this experience, next time I do this, I'm going to be better at it.
As their confidence grows, so does the Plutus scheme. By the end of 2015, Adam Cranston and his business partners are living large and spending big.
There were Porsches, there were BMWs, there was an aircraft. Some of it just went into their bank accounts, padded their bank accounts. Real estate was a big one. Flashy assets, cars, planes, houses. He was living far beyond his means, and that is a very common indicator that somebody is involved in something that is illicit, illegal.
By May 2016, they've embezzled almost $50 million from the tax office. And all that cash begins to attract attention.
In many cases, people who have successful criminal enterprises can't help themselves but share that information with others. And over time, there's a degree of arrogance with that. And once that knowledge gets out there, it spreads relatively quickly.
At this point, the AFP, acting on a tip-off, launches a large-scale covert surveillance operation involving up to 20 police investigators. This is one of their early recorded phone conversations.
Oh, mate, thank Liz for everything, mate. That was amazing. Yeah, it was such an amazing wedding, mate. We had such a blast, eh?
You liked it? It was good? Wine, good wine. I love my good wines.
It's October, just after Adam Cranston's wedding, and he has no idea the police are listening to every word.
Yeah, that was good. I was happy. Yeah, it was Jay.
By now, the syndicate has pocketed around $70 million in unpaid tax, and the conversation reveals that there is much more going on.
We're trying to get all his mates paid and everybody else. So we're not talking logic here, are we? We're talking extortion or the beginnings of extortion.
It's one of more than 450 recordings later used as evidence against them in court.
My thoughts are we keep what he does external to this.
Look, they must have had something very, very significant in terms of initiating the investigation and through the quick assessment process in order to get telephone intercepts so early in the process or so early in the investigation. So it sends a clear message that from the very start, the officers involved, the investigators and AFP corporately, saw that this investigation had significant dimensions to it. Now, at that time, it could be significant in terms of the linkages it has to other organised crime, the amount of money involved, the sophistication of the operation.
By November 2016, Adam has bought himself a new holiday house and a third car, his second Porsche. The business is humming along, but beneath the surface, tensions are brewing. Jay Onley feels like he isn't getting a decent cut of the cash.
It's the money, Adzi. Like, mate, he has become delusional with money. When I was like, mate, you're earning $4 million a year on the books.
In late November, Adam and Jay put on an event at this exclusive private racetrack on the New South Wales Central Coast with associates of one of their companies, Synop.
Any final words in the passenger seat?
No. Good luck.
I got my lap dance. I'm done.
And there's like 2 Porsches there, and we've got 3 fucking race cars. Jay's got a tent with, like, he had 6 naked girls there. He had, he had like a juice bar, guy making fresh juices. Like, it was a really cool day. Don't get me wrong.
Now squat. You back. Oh, no.
Adam recounts a conversation with an acquaintance who clocks their lavish spending.
And he just goes, "You're doing it tough, Adam." I said, "I'm not doing it tough." I said, "Mate, we're doing all right, mate. We've bought a lot of companies and they're making good money." I said, "Mate, we're doing all right. It's like over $1 million worth of cars sitting here, which I know you guys didn't have loans on, right?" He goes, and he goes, "You put on this ridiculous day." He said, "The day itself would have cost 30 grand. He said, "Mate, I don't think any liquidator firm could afford to do this."
Unexplained wealth is when people are living beyond their means. So someone working for a payroll company probably isn't making $100 million a year and able to buy things like multi-million-dollar homes and fancy vehicles and airplanes and boats. So to break down the word, it is unexplained wealth. Where did this money come from? How did this person get the money?
To keep the scam going, they're relying on a network of professional facilitators. The court will ultimately hear the syndicate used so-called friendly liquidators to keep the scheme under the radar.
Liquidators have a very significant position of trust in the economy. Their role is quasi-judicial in some ways, and they are empowered to make very significant decisions. So, for example, they can decide whether or not a debt is legitimate or not. A friendly liquidator, in their description, is somebody who will either look the other way or facilitate the process that goes on. If either of those things are occurring, it should be pretty evident to the regulator what's actually happening.
This is all about vulnerabilities. It's about criminal groups trying to exploit real and what they perceive as vulnerabilities in the systems to make money and to avoid detection.
Police will later intercept a meeting where Menon Onley and Adam Cranston are discussing the liquidation of another of their associated companies. The conversation turns to how they will pay the liquidator.
No, he wants to go. Yeah, that's actually okay. I think they all do it, like none of them. They all do it. Yeah, so that's 50k. Okay, that's the case. Maybe give him 5 or 10 on books. That's all. You just give him 5 in the account. That way he's got something to do his lodgement shit with. It just doesn't look totally sus. But he'll take a bit of heat on that one.
If there's cash payments being given to a dodgy liquidator, that's about as egregious as it gets in this profession. They certainly shouldn't be allowed to continue operating in this marketplace, and it defies explanation in my mind as to how that person hasn't been tracked down and held to account.
John Winter runs Australia's peak body for insolvency experts and believes the corporate regulator ASIC hasn't looked hard enough at the liquidation of Plutus Payroll's second-tier companies.
The evidence has been given that there were friendly liquidators attached to it. It's not that hard for the regulator to line up who was doing the work and start a proper investigation into those. We've seen no evidence of that happening.
ASIC told Four Corners that it engaged with and assisted the AFP with its investigation. It did not answer our specific questions about friendly liquidators linked to the scam, but conceded that it can only undertake a fraction of the potential regulatory and enforcement action it identifies. Police know they need to gather more evidence. They need more than just phone intercepts. To capture the inner workings of the operation, they need to bug their officers.
So putting a listening device inside a car, inside a house, inside a public place, as an example, are incredibly difficult activities with high risk, high likelihood of detection at any stage. So had those listening devices been detected at an early stage, it could have imperiled the investigation itself.
An AFP team covertly installs a secret camera in Plutus Payroll's back office in the South Sydney suburb of Miranda.
I cannot handle humans anymore. I can't do humans.
Now they have a totally new perspective of Plutus's operation.
Alright, I'll plug all this fucking shit in so we can work out what tax we're paying today.
Working the back office is Lauren Cranston, Adam's sister.
Lauren Cranston's involvement in the Plutus tax fraud really was an artefact of the fact that she was the sister of Adam Cranston. She'd been really brought in on the basis that Adam was right at the heart of this. Her role in this was organising a lot of the transactions which occurred around these second-tier organisations.
Federal agents are watching on here in January 2017 to piece together how this group is moving money around. They've now taken almost $100 million.
Where are we going to move this money to?
can't just pay it all to the tax office, but we need something.
No, we can't. I reckon we pay $500 to the ATO. Do you reckon? Fuck it. What is it even there for?
Soon, cracks start to emerge. They underestimate one of their dummy directors, who goes rogue and starts withdrawing cash from some of the accounts.
She's on a bender. Fuck knows where she's going to be next.
The woman takes out $25,000 in 2 days, and they fear she'll take more.
You can't really expect a drug addict, can you? Wouldn't expect anything less. I was expecting more. I was just going to take out like fucking maybe she takes out like 100.
I know, that's what I'm waiting for. Oh, if only she knew, like...
Does she not know she's got chased?
Morgan, you fucking idiot. She'll be living the life for about 20 days and then it will come crashing down.
The dummy directors recruited by the syndicate in return for cash payments are, by design, drug-dependent and destitute people. They have little to no understanding of the scheme and no assets.
It's an appallingly criminal act. These people have been exploited, selected purely on the basis that they were vulnerable and in need of money and desperate, and they had no knowledge of what they were signing themselves up to, and they represented easy fall guys for the conspirators.
And that's a common tactic these fraudsters use. They destroy the company records, they put someone in who's a target who has no assets, a liquidator comes in, there's no funds, you know, the liquidator will then ask the Australian Taxation Office for funds or ASIC, won't get the funds, and, you know, is left with their hands tied as to what action they can take.
One of the men they rely on to do the dirty work of recruiting dummy or straw directors is Daniel Rostenkovsky, also known as Big D. He's known by the conspirators as an associate of the Comancheros.
So Daniel Rostenkovsky is, I guess, a known standover figure who was involved in the recruitment of a lot of the straw directors who ran that second set of second-tier companies which were involved in the fraud.
In the heart of Sydney, Big D has just walked into the office of the syndicate's lawyer, Dev Menon.
Can't we do this day where she just literally, we just give her $2,000, whatever. Just literally just pay her, say, look, this is the last meeting, otherwise fuck off, we don't want to see you again.
They think they can speak freely here, but Menon's office has now also been bugged by the AFP with 3 separate listening devices.
Dev Menon's role in this became increasingly important. He was advising a lot of the actors in the fraud about the way in which their organisation could be structured to best avoid being detected.
Well, lawyers are seen as being required to have a higher duty and obligations in their conduct. They're officers of the court. So to have an officer of the court involved in this sort of criminal activity, in some cases, is even much worse than having the average Joe Blow who's a criminal involved in this sort of activity.
The ATO has been sending letters to some of the dummy directors, demanding they pay back the tax owed by the companies they're supposedly running. So far, they've been eluding them. Only Menon and Adam Cranston start talking about covertly paying the directors off to ensure that they stick to the story.
You know, I don't want to give them 10 grand because that's too much for these fucking people. You give them 2.5 and 2.5 because they're going to hit us for more money later, right? You get them. We've got to leave a little bit of leeway here because when they get pulled in or get investigated, they're going to hit us for more money. So we might as well just prepare for that. You know what?
They consider paying off one particular dummy director and strategise with Big D that the man should leave town to avoid questioning.
Yeah, $1,000 a week. Because we'll pay him. We'll look after him. Like, for that big one, Joe, you want $1,000 a week. Yeah, just want him to stay away. Yeah, he needs to stay away. He needs to enjoy living there in Bali, so he doesn't want to come back. Yeah, $500 a week. He's getting fucking paid to have a holiday. That's the greatest job in the world. I think he loves Thailand. This is like Jason Bourne style shit, you know what I mean? Yeah.
They would have thought that they were pretty crafty, that they were pretty smart, that they were getting away with it for quite a long time, when in reality they were being investigated for quite a long time in order to bring about a really strong case against them.
Now the ATO raises the stakes, freezing their accounts to stop the flow of money from the second-tier companies. Plutus is still safe for now, but it's a severe blow to their operations. Lauren Cranston calls Dev Menon.
Loza,
Yeah, we have a massive issue.
have they blocked the account?
No, they haven't blocked them. Every single one, nothing's going out.
This is fucked.
With the accounts frozen, they can't pay wages to any of their clients. Menon immediately calls Big D.
Hey, bro.
Hey, D, oh fuck, this is DEFCON 5, man. No payments can fucking go out, eh?
Bro, but what's that mean, man?
Okay, so
Menon tells him they need to find a dummy director to try to unlock the accounts.
So can you grab one of them, get them to call up the bank ASAP and just say, look, our account's been blocked, we're trying to pay our wages and the ATO. Why are you blocking this? Like, what do I need to do? Because I'm just scared that they've blocked it, or all of them together, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, fuck.
And
but wait, I'm saying if they've blocked them all of them together, then it's not a fucking...
Oh, I think it's the bank. I don't think it's the government. No, I don't think it's the ATO. I think it's just the bank.
Dev Menon is wrong. It is the ATO, using what's known as a garnishee order, to directly intervene, seizing the money owed to it.
Hey,
mate, how are you?
How's it go?
So basically there's a garnishee order on all the accounts.
Shut the fuck up.
Yep.
From the ATO?
Yep.
You're kidding me? All of them?
Yep.
Or just that one?
All of them. They've all been picked for the same thing, bro. They've all got garnishee orders against them. Yeah, they got
we're cool. All right, now we're fucked, man. Like, we're fucked to the capital level.
But how are you gonna move the money?
We're fucked. What do you mean? It's gone. The money's gone. The ATO's going to take it all.
Federal agents listening in continue to build the case against them. In this casual exchange, they capture a brazen admission that the scheme is ripping people off.
The benefit we do have is that Plutus is a money machine, and it generates a fuckload. So it's a Ponzi, but the ATO won't know it's a Ponzi. Not until well down the track.
Adam Cranston, Dev Menon and Simon Anquetil are in denial.
The LAS, the silence in LA. Yeah, good at taking. Just getting half smoked by the tax office. How do you?
They're clinging to a belief they can keep Plutus going. In an attempt to throw the ATO off, they plan to pay just a little more tax.
The tax office will be ringing us and going off their head, right? But what we do is we just keep marching forward until literally they get to the point where they go, oh, we're going to wind you up. So this is now a full-time job for Dev and I to keep this thing alive.
It's just the arrogance. You sort of sit there and you listen to that and you go, you know, these people are proud of what they're doing. You know, it's easy to say ripping off the tax system, but they're ripping off everyday Australians with significant amounts of money, and they're showing an intent to go bigger, go harder in doing so.
Panic sets in, and now they're trying desperately to cover their tracks.
You can go in the bingo bag.
Lauren Cranston can be seen here bundling laptops and documents into a bag to destroy evidence that could incriminate them.
That needs to go.
The court later heard that Adam Cranston was present as they lit a bonfire in a skip bin to destroy paperwork. It also heard there were discussions about which laptops needed to go for a swim. As they try to mount their defences against the ATO, internally the syndicate is at breaking point.
So I think it's the case that if you and I had a profitable company, we'd soon start to receive phone calls from big venture capital companies. If we're running a criminal enterprise, we also get the phone calls, but those phone calls would be from the conspirators or the Hells Angels.
Their business partner, Big D, turns on them with a chilling blackmail demand.
No. Hey, bro. Sit down. No, I'll be honest with you, sit down. All the boys doing that, all the comment boys doing that. They want to come up and do the fuck out of these guys. I'm not doing anything.
First, he threatens violence from the conspirators. Then he threatens to expose them.
I've seen it all. It says amount being put into the accounts, what's being paid back, and what's being withheld. It's all there. It's clear as day. We can see the whole scheme here. This is the money that hasn't been paid to the tax office. And it was fucking huge, bro. Don't lie to me, because if you lie to me, I'm just going to walk out and I'm just going to hand it over.
I'm not lying to you. You're overreacting. Can we all calm down first?
I'm calm, bro.
Big D calls one of his dummy directors, who claims he's outside the Australian Federal Police headquarters, poised to upend the entire scheme.
I'm just with the gentleman now. Whereabouts are you? Alright. And who do you know that ran this operation?
Big small operation?
Yeah.
I think most of the boss that I have in Cranston, and they on me.
Yeah.
And then the criminal lawyers dead men.
With the upper hand against his former allies, Big D demands they pay $5 million in exchange for silence.
I'm looking at two choices. One, these guys get their money that they're asking for. Yeah. They'll hush their fucking mouths and I'll sign a fucking gag order, they'll sign all the fucking gag, whatever needs to be done, and we'll proceed as planned. Two, I don't give them the money because I don't fucking have it. You told me yourself Plutus is a $300 million company. I'm not a dirty to go say, I want fucking $15 million. I'm not a fucking asshole.
Big D later ups the figure to $25 million. Within 3 months, they've paid it in full.
No honour among thieves. We really have to avoid feeling any form of sympathy for these people. They undertook a sophisticated criminal operation, set it up, gloated about it, manipulated people. And so when they were discovered by other criminal groups, in some ways they got their just desserts.
Now, threats are coming at them from all sides. A business associate extorts Jay for more money.
But aren't you sick of running and dodging and fucking going? No, I've had enough of that. I really have. I'm almost divorced, bro. I'm almost fucked. I'm almost about to lose my family. Like, my wife's had enough. She's like, she calls me a pussy. She says, why do you fucking stand up? Why are you running all the time? Why are you fucking scared? And I said, baby, because I've got to pay fucking tax. I've got no money because I owe shit of fucking tax. Well, there's no way of dodging that tax now because everyone's fucking looking at it.
On the 26th of April 2017, the moment the architects of the Plutus Payroll scheme have dreaded finally arrives. Investigators are ready to take down the syndicate. The ATO freezes all the bank accounts operated by Plutus Payroll, bringing the entire scheme to a shuddering halt. In a final act of desperation, Adam picks up the phone and calls his father, a deputy commissioner of the ATO, Michael Cranston.
Yeah, Addy? Yeah.
Recordings of this call would later be used as evidence in Adam's trial. He gives his father a highly selective version of events, telling Michael he thinks Plutus's troubles are linked to a previous business partner.
Our biggest risk is the ATO's garnished the account, so we've got 2,000 contractors that we can't pay their wages.
There is no evidence Michael Cranston is aware of his son's scheme. Nevertheless, he offers him advice.
Well, we've got to think of a strategy if you want to.
Devon, I can come and speak to you. We'll come and speak to you Monday. I'll talk over the phone anyway.
You have a total legal strategy in transferring you're separate from it all?
Yeah.
Or you have a negotiation strategy that you are separate from it all?
Yep.
Or the third option is just let it back and sink. Lose everything out of it.
Michael Cranston would later say he gave Adam the same general guidance that he would to any taxpayer.
The average Australian doesn't have the capacity to contact their father whenever there's a potential issue with the ATO. So any sort of advice here, I think, is deeply problematic.
Hello, Lisa. What happened?
Adam's contact with his father, Michael, continued days later.
What you've got to remember, Adam, what you did in the past you got away with, right? You get away with it when nobody knows about it, right? You think you get away with it, but you don't. We're so good at connecting people. That's what's worrying me about it. I know you've got to, I'm really trying to, mate, you just make sure you haven't got anything in anywhere. You could be subject to search warrants, or I'm not want to scare you, but you could be.
Yeah, I know. I'm well aware of it.
Michael Cranston later says that in this conversation, he was referring to an incident where a former business partner of Adam's embezzled funds. He warns Adam that Plutus might already be on an ATO watch list.
But I'm just thinking, mate, I reckon you're in the top 50. I've just got a feeling you are.
Really?
I'm not 100% sure. I'm just going to be very sneaky with try and give me the list for other reasons in a month's time. But look, don't get scared, mate. I'm just trying to get you to make sure you got everything covered, and don't think about being greedy, about holding on to anything. Get rid of all that shit.
No.
As quick as possible, mate.
Michael Cranston never follows through on these inquiries or accesses any tax records. He then cautions his son that he needs to be able to account for his assets.
I've got no unexplained wealth, mate. Mate, all my tax returns and everything that I own has been after tax dollars, mate. There's no unexplained wealth. Zero.
You got a lot of fucking cars, mate.
Yeah, I think this is a realisation from Michael Cranston that the lifestyle that his son's living is really out of kilter with perhaps what he's declared. By the time the Plutus thing has been wrapped up, Adam has multiple sports cars in his ownership.
In mid-May 2017, federal agents swoop on the syndicate, executing 36 search warrants and arresting 9 people.
Some of the assets and proceeds of crime seized include at least $15 million in cash, 25 motor vehicles, 18 residential properties, 12 motorbikes, in excess of 100 bank accounts and share trading accounts, 2 aircraft, firearms, jewellery, artwork, vintage wines, and also at least $1 million that we've located in a safe deposit box.
It's absolutely not victimless. It feeds other crimes. It feeds organized crime. It allows these criminals to keep operating. And it really does remove a huge amount of money from public resourcing. Money then has to go into investigations as a result. It has to go into legal aid for people that are being investigated. So it costs a lot of money. Financial crime costs a lot, and it costs every single one of us.
Deputy Commissioner Michael Cranston was charged with 2 counts of abusing his position as a public official to obtain a benefit for his son Adam.
Why did you resign from the ATO?
He was never accused of taking part in the tax fraud and was found not guilty of the charges in 2019.
I guess one of the more shocking aspects is how closely it was connected to one of the most senior people in the ATO. And we understand that the evidence has been brought forward that he didn't know of the conspiracy that was going on. But it certainly raises your eyebrows when the children of a Deputy Commissioner of the ATO are the people leading the greatest tax fraud in the history of Australia. It was a shocking moment for everybody.
An independent review by the Tax Office found Michael Cranston failed to act with honesty and integrity. Michael Cranston told Four Corners he rejects the findings of the ATO review, that it took the recordings out of context, and that he did not participate in it while his criminal case was ongoing. Daniel Rostenkowski pleaded guilty to blackmail, money laundering and fraud and was sentenced to 10 years imprisonment. Simon Anquetil pleaded guilty to conspiring to dishonestly cause a loss to the Australian government and dealing with the proceeds of crime. He was sentenced to 7 years imprisonment in 2020.
Tax fraud and money laundering conspiracies involved a significant level of sophistication, premeditation, planning and deception, and a high degree of dishonesty and corresponding breach of trust.
Lauren Cranston was found guilty at trial of the same offences. She was sentenced to 8 years imprisonment in March 2023.
I've concluded that whilst greed in the receipt of over $181,000 for involvement in the conspiracies forms part of the explanation for Ms Cranston's conduct, her participation was primarily the result of a misguided sense of loyalty to the people directing the conspiracies, particularly her brother, Adam Cranston.
Adam Cranston, Dev Menon and Jay Onley were also found guilty at trial and will be sentenced in coming weeks.
There is no forensic accountant in the world, mate. They will never figure it out. The blessing in disguise was that it was such a clusterfuck that no one will figure this out.